The first half of Don't Touch My Daughter is really good, really suspenseful. The second half, I really didn't like. It felt so unrealistic that I just couldn't buy into it. However, in case you do decide to watch it, I won't give any spoilers for what happens in the second half. This was released in 1991. It's directed by John Pasquin. I apologise if I've mispronounced that. And it's written by John Bensink and Rick Husky. And it's based on the novel by Marjorie Dorner. I haven't read the novel. If you have any thoughts on that, please feel free to let me know. And this is about a woman called Linda, played by Victoria Principal, whose daughter is kidnapped at the beginning of the film, but her daughter manages to escape. And her daughter can actually identify the person who kidnapped her. And obviously the police arrest him straight away. This is at the beginning of the film. And it seems like things are not clear-cut. It's not just a case of, obviously not just a case of going by what the daughter said, arresting him, job done. It's not that straightforward. And part of the film is about Linda doing everything she can to prove that he is guilty. But she's also doing everything she can to protect her daughter because her daughter might not be safe. And I think both of those things combined, for the most part, made for quite a suspenseful film. And as I said, I really enjoyed the first half. It was really unpredictable. Linda's actions felt really believable. I was really buying into the narrative. However, the second half, maybe the final third, I don't know if it was exactly the second half, but certainly a good chunk of the film, something happened. And it's a key turning point, and you'll know which bit I mean, I think. And from that point on, it felt so unbelievable. It felt so unrealistic. The investigation wasn't believable. Linda's involvement in the investigation from that point on, that's not how things would play out. I guess with a spoiler warning in a moment, I'll tell you which bit I mean, just in case you've seen it but you're not clear because maybe you don't have the same beliefs as I do, so it might not be clear to you. But I'll talk about that in a moment with a spoiler warning. But the point there is that I lost all faith in the narrative from somewhere between the final half, second half, or the final third. It just was very poorly written, very, very poorly written. And it's almost like a film of two halves. So a really strong start, really poor, kind of frustrating second-ish part. Do I recommend it? Honestly, I don't know, because it does feel like a film of two halves. I guess if it sounds like your kind of story, and it absolutely is my kind of story, I'd say give it a go. You might not be annoyed as much as I was by the way things went. It is, in general, an interesting narrative. The performances are very good. The characters' actions are generally believable, particularly Linda's actions. So it's okay, but from a certain point, it basically became terrible. So not perfect, to say the least. But if it sounds like it might appeal to you, check it out. So I will now, with a huge, huge spoiler warning, talk about what I'm going on about, just in case you're not in agreement with me and it's not clear what I'm talking about. So big spoilers from now. I am talking about the point when Linda shot the suspect. And as soon as she put the gun in his hand, my immediate thought was there's absolutely no way that that's going to be believably suicide. It absolutely isn't. There are so many things about it that just wouldn't work out. It would be really obvious that it was not suicide. And the bit that annoyed me the most is when she was basically brought into the investigation. She had, unless they suspected her, she had nothing to do with his apparent murder. She shouldn't have been brought in to be involved in it. That would really cause a lot of problems, and it's completely unbelievable. And then the fact that she got away with it, I don't agree with. One of the lines in the film at one point is, "Murder is murder." And yes, she had to do everything to protect her daughter, but I don't think putting herself in harm's way was the way to do that anyway. By going into his apartment, he could have killed her. He is clearly a vicious person. He is clearly violent and capable of serious crimes. So if you have a young child, why would you put yourself in a position where he could very easily kill you? Obviously, that's not what happened, but that's the situation she was letting herself get into. So I don't think she made very sensible decisions, and it was very frustrating. And I know I said earlier that her actions were very believable. I don't know if that's believable. Obviously, I've never been in that position and hopefully never would be, but I don't necessarily think it was the wise decision. If I was protecting my child, I have a cat, not a child, but if I was protecting my cat, I wouldn't put myself in a position where I would very likely be murdered, because then who would look after the cat? So I don't think she thought it through, and I don't think it's very believable. And then when she put the gun in his hand, immediately there was nothing about that scene that would make suicide seem believable at all. And I just don't think it was very well written. I don't think it was well thought through. I don't think involving her in that investigation made any sense whatsoever. I don't think writing probable suicide as the official cause of death from the police perspective made any sense whatsoever. I just don't understand why they thought this would be a believable approach. And of course, one could argue she didn't get away with it, because at the very end she gets a phone call from somebody saying, I know it was murder. So perhaps the final message is your guilty conscience will always hang over you. But at the same time, she still got away with it. So I don't like the way it went from that point on. I don't think she made any sensible decisions in going into his apartment. I don't think it was sensible to involve her in the investigation. It just didn't make any sense to me whatsoever, and it kind of ruined the film. I think some very bad decisions were made. It didn't work out well. But if it sounds like your kind of film, maybe it's worth watching once.